It ain't good. It ain't good.
Alrighty, so new Multiverse of Madness came out. New movie directed by Sam Raimi. And a lot of mixed feelings about it. A lot of very decisive takes. And needless to say, I feel like you are either on one side of the spectrum or the other. I personally fall on the dislike it, but I wouldn't say I hate it. It's not the worst Marvel movie by any means, but it's definitely far from the best. Some things I liked just right out the gate. Some cool shots and sequences. I think Sam Raimi did a really nice job. I don't know, just in certain, obviously them flying through the multiverse was very awesome. Strange walking up the stairs, when he's going in like the dark universe or whatever. All very cool things. It's also very new. Refreshing. I know that's not like an insanely, widely debated thing, but the fact that this movie is as diverse when compared to other Marvel properties is a very interesting point. And it doesn't necessarily make it good, but I do think it's very interesting. Some of the few interesting ideas I also liked in this movie. Evil Doctor Strange, the Darkhold, I think was a nice little plot device, all things considered, but I don't know. Having said all that, I think that is like the extent of my enjoyment from this movie. I really did not enjoy this movie. I think in terms of quality, this is not the worst, but in terms of my enjoyment, I really did not like it at all. I did not like this movie one bit. I think I liked it more than Captain Marvel, but like honestly less than Dark World, even if Dark World is only carried by Loki in my opinion. But still, I like Loki a lot, blah blah blah. I don't know, there's not a lot to enjoy in this movie. I feel like I don't know, beyond like those few things I listed, I don't really know why people are going crazy over this movie. Spoilers ahead, obviously. I don't know, if you haven't seen the movie, I don't think spoilers are really going to kill your enjoyment. I think you'll like it all the same, but there are some minor spoilers that aren't really talked about, in trailer and promo material. First off, my biggest problem with this movie is definitely the tone deafness of everything. I feel like it really has no idea what it is or who it's for, and it really shows. It's like it wants to be a horror movie while still being a Marvel movie, and it fails like completely at both. I hate it. It's horrible. Any element of horror that's in this movie is not a good element of horror. I'm not a big fan of horror as is, but I am capable of acknowledging what is good in horror and what is bad. And let me say, this is like the most bland, predictable horror shit you could possibly imagine. And like really, the only real horror aspects are like one scene where like again, spoilers, but she's the main villain, and she's like chasing Doctor Strange and like the main cast through the hall, and like that's kind of it. Is like she's like on a rampage and she's like a little spooky or whatever, but like I don't know, every jump scare felt predictable. All the gore in the movie wasn't even like shown. It was like all off screen or like hinted at, which I didn't really like. I feel like if you're gonna go that full aggressive violent take on a superhero movie, I feel like you should go the full way, you know what I mean? I think The Boys does a really good job at that, the TV show on Hulu. When they show violence, it's fucking violent, you know what I mean? And it serves a larger narrative. This just felt like people dying in horrible ways for like no reason. But then honestly, the worst part, again, I don't hate the fact that it wants to be like a new kind of genre, like a superhero horror thing. I don't hate that. What I really hate is how those horror elements like are completely juxtaposed with the more Marvel comedic kind of idea, you know what I mean? Like your stereotypical Marvel jokes, and it really does not work in this movie. Every single Marvel joke, I am just sitting there like, man, remember when Wanda cut that woman in half? Or man, remember when Wanda blew up that guy's brain? That was crazy, dude. And now we have like a joke where when fucking Doctor Strange near the end of the movie winks into the camera, I'm just like, what? I wanted to leave, like, why? She just killed like 3 people in a most horrific way possible, and we're just playing it off like it's nothing. And I don't know, it really did not work. The whole fucking 180 between like Wanda being this fucking completely corrupted, completely villainized, completely horrible, unstoppable force, to just her like doing one-offs with America, the main like a heroine of the story. I'm like, I don't get it. There was like a whole scene where it's like, oh, America's got her powers now and she's gonna kick some ass. It's like, oh, America's all like, and then Wanda goes, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck is happening here? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't understand how that fits in with a movie where a guy's head just got blown off and someone just got sawed in half. You know what I mean? It's completely tone deaf, and I think it because it tries to juggle the two, it fails horribly at both. Another big complaint I have for this movie is the action. The action in this movie is honestly probably the worst in any Marvel movie, or at least one of the worst. I keep saying the worst. I'm being aggressive with the movie. I know that. It's not the worst movie ever made, but like the action, I expected way more out of the action scenes in this movie, I'm going to be honest. For a movie about fucking wizards, I just feel like there was barely anything magical happening. You know what I mean? Like, there was that interesting part with like the music notes when Doctor Strange is fighting Dark Doctor Strange, but I am ultimately not really that interested in it. You know what I mean? Like it happened for 5 minutes and it was the same fucking gimmick the entire fight, and then the evil Doctor Strange just gets killed by like one note off of a harp, and I'm like, that's it. It's just really, it's really depressing when you have a movie about wizards and it basically just boils down to who can shoot the biggest lasers against the smallest shields or whatever. It's like, I don't know, like it's really boring. And I think when you compare it to the first movie, I think there's a lot of interesting fight sequences in the first movie, you know, with them warping reality and, you know, running on buildings and whatnot. And especially coming off of such great action scenes that were in No Way Home, I think that comparing the two movies, it just feels really boring to watch. There was like one kind of interesting part where Wanda's like taking people from the mirror dimension and killing them, and she's like coming through reflections and shit. That's kind of cool. But like, I don't know. I mean, even the last fight just ended with a big believe in yourself punch, and I don't think that's entertaining at all. One of the big reasons I like the Harry Potter fight, what was it, the Dumbledore versus like Voldemort fight, I think that's a really interesting fight, and it's really engaging to watch because of how they use the magic system and like all the creative things they do with it. I mean, magic's such a creative thing in general. I feel like it's very limited in this movie, and I do not like that at all. I mean, even if you compare it to with like Doctor Strange versus Thanos, I think that you could just see a difference. You know, it feels just less interesting. I mean, I know I've said that a few times, but everything about the action in this film feels really bland and boring, like it could be thrown in any other Marvel movie. I mean, for crying out loud, there's a fight scene between two wizards that is literally just a fist fight. And that shit was insane to me. I'm like, oh, so he's gonna, you know, trick him into getting the gauntlets off and then we're gonna see a magic battle. I was like, no, it's just them fighting like normal fucking dudes. And I'm like, but these are two wizards, you know what I mean? They do magic shit. And the fact that they don't is really, really boring and unengaging. So when you have a movie that's already completely tone deaf and has no idea what it's doing, and then you combine that with action scenes, which are normally like the big selling point of Marvel movies. If we're being honest, a lot of the action is why people go out and see this. But the fact that the action isn't even like any different than any other Marvel movie, you could probably splice this into like half of the Marvel movies and it'd look just like any other Marvel movie, you know? And I think that's a really big letdown for a character as cool as Doctor Strange or a character as cool as Wanda. And I don't know. It was and it felt like Wong, despite being the Sorcerer Supreme, and I'm assuming taking charge for 2 years after the whole snap and everything, you'd assume he's like actually got some cool skills, like cool power-ups and shit. But really, it's like the entire movie is just using a whip with a knife at the end. And I'm like, okay, that's it? That's it, you know? And so, I don't know, I just wasn't that impressed by a lot of the things in this movie. Visually, anyway. Another big complaint I have with this movie is Wanda. Honestly, she should not have been the main villain. For starters, I mean, out of the 5 Marvel movies and, you know, 1 TV show she's been the antagonist for basically 3.5. And that's kind of, like, ridiculous. I understand the comics, she's, like, kind of, you know, back and forth or whatever. But the fact that we've only had this few amount of content from her, or this little amount of content from her, and she's only like an actual character for like 2 movies, it feels bad. I feel like her character arc, like every time I feel like her character arc gets finished and then it just repeats itself, you know what I mean? Oh, I'm the bad guy, you know, I'll change my ways and I fucked up, my bad, I'll be good. And then she becomes the bad guy and she's like, fuck, I fucked up again, I'll be good. And then she's a fucking bad guy again. And I'm just like, I mean, literally, Ultron, arguably Civil War, depending on what side you're on,
the WandaVision show, and now this movie. She was all basically the bad guy, or at least an antagonist to some extent. And I think that's just really unfortunate for a character. I feel like it's just the same thing on loop, and it made it really boring to watch her in this movie be bad for the 4th time in a row. I much rather would have had what I thought was going to be and what I think a lot of the promo material was going to be, which is like a Strange versus Darker Strange. I think that would have been a lot more interesting, really enforce that struggle that they kind of hinted at between like Doctor Strange is like, he's willing to sacrifice a lot for the greater good. You know what I mean? He always puts the greater good against the individual needs. And I think if they leaned into that more and saw like the full extreme of that, of like a Doctor Strange that's like, yeah, I'm protecting the multiverse, I'm an all-powerful being, blah, 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 and I make tons of sacrifices in the name of the greater good, versus our Doctor Strange that's like, you know, I want to do good, and I do value, you know, utilitarian ideals or whatever, but obviously there's a line that I'm just not willing to cross. And I think if they leaned into that more, it would have been a lot more interesting, but instead we just got like Wanda, who's really upset about her kids, and I don't know, it wasn't that interesting, that's all. And honestly, in general, there's just a lot of little things that add up over time. I mean, like, for example, we'll just do a lightning round real quick. How is Wanda sending monsters through the multiverse but can't send herself? How come Doctor Strange accidentally opened the multiverse in No Way Home but can't do it on purpose? Like, I feel like if you accidentally do a standing backflip, you could probably purposely do a standing backflip, at least if you give enough practice or whatever, you know what I mean? So that was a little weird. I feel like Wanda, I don't know if they really talked about this. If they did talk about it, they didn't talk about it enough. Why does Wanda want to go to this one universe specifically? You know what I mean? Like, why not just go to a universe where her kids are orphaned and she doesn't have to worry about killing that universe's Scarlet Witch or anything? You know what I mean? Like, it just felt weird. Where's the TVA? Are like timelines different from multiverse? I mean, that's kind of a nitpick because it's TVA wasn't hinted at in this movie, but like in the grand scheme of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's like, what's the difference here? If timelines are different, then universes how? And if they're the same, then why isn't the big bad involved? I don't know. That was a little confusing. How did she find America? I was confused about that. Like, she just happened to see this one chick in the infinite reality, like, or the infinite multiverse. She just found the one person to exist with this power. That was a little strange. I didn't really understand how that worked. What the fuck even is America? Like, she's like, oh, I'm the only one in my universe because I don't have dreams and everything. And then they just kind of like brush that off. Like, what's her backstory? How did she exist in the first place? You know, I feel like that we just needed more time with America in general. And I don't know. That was very strange. Why kill America? I mean, there's literally a scene where Wanda is controlling America with like her little voodoo magic powers, and I'm just sitting there like, well, why can't you just use Wanda to go to a reality? I know she said like, oh, if my kids get sick or whatever, then I could just go to a reality where there's a cure, blah, 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 blah. But like, couldn't you just go to a reality where your kids are immortal or some shit? You know what I mean? Or at least like in the sense that they only can die from old age. I just don't understand. I mean, it's a multiverse. There's infinite possibilities. Why is she so fixated on going to like such a specific one? I feel like you could, if you're gonna choose a multiverse to abduct children from, I feel like you might as well be picky with what children you're gonna get. You know what I mean? Like, I was also very confused on like the power scaling of Wanda, if that makes sense. Like, how come Wanda can turn this guy into spaghetti but like struggles against, you know, a roided up Brit? And I don't know, that was confusing. She destroyed the Darkhold across the multiverse. Like, legit, how strong is she? How is anything even a challenge for her in this movie? Even if that action, like, cost her her life or whatever, it's like, oh, it's like the ultimate prize to do something across the multiverse, blah, blah, blah. It still doesn't make sense how she doesn't have the strength to at least teleport herself across the multiverse. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like half of infinity is still infinity. You know what I mean? Like, it was very confusing how she could just do something of such a monumental feat, but then struggle against, again, the roided up Brit. So I don't really get that. Why the fuck did they add the whole like souls of the damned? That just felt really forced and out of pocket just for the love interest to do something. I don't even remember the love interest name. She was very boring and I did not care about her at all. But like, it was just, I don't know, it was such a one-off, and then all it ended with was, hey, remember you're a sorcerer, you know, just use your sorcerer's brain, just use the sorcerer powers and beat them and use them and just take control of him because you can do that, I guess. And then he just does it, and that's it. Like, he was struggling for so long, and then all of a sudden he just believes it himself, and that's the resolution you get. Congratulations, move on. And I don't know, that was very underwhelming. And the whole thing with like the little sister backstory with Strange felt really out of pocket and out of place. It didn't even make sense. Like, what if he was from a universe where he didn't have a sister? Then he could just be making it up. You know what I mean? Like, that whole, oh, you gotta like prove it to me. It's like he could literally say anything and it could be true in the grand scheme of the multiverse. And on that same note, I feel like the multiverse was really underutilized in general. I mean, we went to a total of 2 different worlds. We went to like the dark, broken world, and then the fucking like solar punk world. I don't know. It was just, I felt like for a movie called The Multiverse of Madness, there was very little multiverse or madness for that matter. But the cameos in this movie were absolutely horrendous. I know a lot of people are like clowning on people who don't like this movie, being like, oh, haha, you didn't like it because there weren't that many cameos, haha, get fucked. I'm like, no, I didn't like it because there were like shitty cameos. I would have preferred no cameos over the fucking shit that was in this movie. I just, like, why introduce 3 different new cameo characters only to kill them off in 5 minutes? Like, it's literally just fan service. It's worse than a regular cameo. I would have preferred seeing an altered Iron Man and being like, oh, at least it's just Iron Man, you know what I mean? Versus you just, like, you know, jacking off the fans' dicks with, oh, wow, it's a fantastic scene. Oh, Charles Xavier, and then immediately kill him off like 5 seconds later. I just don't understand that. Honestly, the Illuminati in general was also pretty dumb, if we're thinking about it. It was like, who do you work for? The Avengers, Hydra, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, the Illuminati. And I'm like, and they didn't even like make a joke about it. I'm just like, okay. Literally the whole theater was laughing at just how like casual they said it. They were just like, no, we work for the Illuminati. And like dead ass, dead face, just completely a deadpan expression. They're like, we work for the Illuminati, okay? Listen here, motherfucker. We work for the goddamn Illuminati, all right? I don't know, that was just really funny. But the Illuminati as a whole is very, very stupid. I didn't, like, Doctor Strange came here, warned them of a threat, and they're like, oh, well, don't worry about that. You're the only threat here, blah, blah, blah. And then the threat comes, and then they're like, oh, fuck, the threat's here. And it's like, yeah, no fucking shit. He told you she was coming. The least you could have done was prepare. You know what I mean? I don't know. That shit was pretty dumb. And again, I just really wish there were not, like, I would have preferred no cameos over them just dying like 10 seconds in. You know what I mean? That shit was boring as fuck. I don't know. You could chalk all this up to like nitpicking, but like when you add it all together, at the end of the day, it's like half the movie I'm complaining about right now. You know what I mean? And that is a lot of fucking movie to be ass, you know? When half your movie is not that great or is like completely tone deaf or, you know, boring to watch, it's just not a good movie. And I feel like a lot of the hype this movie gets is based on the sole idea that, oh, it's a little darker than most Marvel movies and a little different tone and style and blah blah blah. But I don't know. And I mean, again, that's only like half the list. I didn't even talk about the whole hallway scene where it's like, why the fuck are you standing here for 5 minutes? You know she's gonna come through the door. There's just a lot of like little things in this movie that add up. And on top of those little things, you've got the big things like the tone deafness and the boring action sequences. And I think that all in all, it's just not a great movie. Again, I'm ragging on it a lot. I know. It's not the worst movie. It's not even the worst Marvel movie. But it is arguably my least favorite Marvel movie. All things considered, it is arguably my least favorite. That's not to say I think it's the worst, because I do think there are worse Marvel movies, but it is definitely one of my least favorites. And the thing is, I don't even know really who to blame for a lot of these grievances. I want to say Sam Raimi, but honestly, I think actually watching the movie, the vibe I get, if I'm putting on my little tinfoil hat here, the vibe I get from this movie is that Raimi really wanted to lean into the whole, R rating, you know, can I really go all out, make it like a full-blown horror movie? And Disney was like, nah, you gotta keep it at least a little Marvel, only PG-13 here, all right, a little Marvel. And so, I don't know, that's my conspiracy theory. I would be curious to see, I know there was like 40-some minutes cut from the movie. I would have been curious to see what that would have added, if it explains a lot of those plot holes and whatnot. But I don't know. There's a lot of problems with this movie, and I feel like a lot of people are just so brainwashed on the original Marvel formula that the moment it changes slightly, people lose their shit and make it out to be the best thing in the entire franchise.
And don't get me wrong, I don't dislike fresh ideas, but like the same thing happened with Guardians of the Galaxy. You know what I mean? It came out, it was a very fresh idea, very fresh style, and people loved it. And I feel like going back to that movie and watching it, it's like it's still a good movie, but I feel like a lot of the praise it got was because of how different it was from the normal Marvel formula. And I don't necessarily think that something should be praised just on the idea of freshness. It should be praised on how well it executes that idea of freshness. And frankly, I think Multiverse of Madness did not execute pretty well. But don't blame me. Don't yell at me. Don't. I'm just a little small boy. Please do not hurt me. I still like the movie. It's still a fine movie. I do not hate this movie. Just please don't hurt me. All right.
And yeah, that's really it. I don't know. Not a great movie. Not the worst movie. Definitely do not recommend though. If I were to give it a number score, I'd probably say it's like probably a 4 out of 10. Honestly, I know a lot of people are gonna hate me for that, but I don't care. Bye.